You are secretly orchestrating your own ruin. The face in the mirror is a lie, a fragile mask, hiding a feral, starved monster controlling your every self-destructive urge. Watch until the very end to confront this dark architect before it violently burns your entire life to ash. Listen to me very carefully. You are being hunted. You are being hunted not by an enemy you can see outrun or destroy with sheer willpower, but by a primordial phantom that wears your own face and speaks in your own voice. Have you ever felt it, that sudden paralyzing dread that strikes you in the suffocating silence of the night, the creeping realization that despite doing everything perfectly right, your life feels unbearably hollow? You build your empires, you lay your careful plans, and then, driven by a sickness you cannot name, you strike the match and burn it all to the ground. You are self-sabotaging, and you do not know why. Myth Eryndor warmly welcomes you to a journey into the absolute unknown, a place where the comforting illusions of your life will be mercilessly stripped away. If you have the courage to face the architect of your ruin and finally break this maddening cycle of self-destruction, I urge you to subscribe to this channel right now, empowering us to continue bringing you the profound truths that modern society desperately wants to keep hidden. We are living through a silent, terrifying epidemic of the soul. I know you have felt that profound exhaustion that no amount of sleep can cure. You have read the endless stacks of self-help books. You have chanted their hollow affirmations through gritted teeth, painted on a desperate smile, and swallowed the toxic positivity that demands you simply think better thoughts and banish the negativity. I know the taste of that bitter medicine, and I can tell you from the depths of my own experience that it does not cure the disease. It is nothing but a fragile coat of fresh paint slapped over a crumbling, rotting foundation. The enemy is not the collapsing economy, the people who betrayed you, or the ghosts of your childhood, however much they may have bruised you. The true adversary resides within the subterranean, lightless corridors of your own mind. It is an ancient, overwhelmingly powerful force operating entirely outside the pitiful jurisdiction of your conscious will. To even begin to understand it, we must violently discard the shallow, pathetic little maps of human psychology we have been handed. Consider Sigmund Freud, the man who first tried to chart our inner darkness. He handed us a map of a basement, a finite biological pressure cooker of repressed desires and childhood traumas. It was a bleak, mechanistic view that treated the human mind like a broken engine to be managed. But there was another map maker, Carl Jung, a visionary who realized that Freud's basement had a hidden trapdoor. And when Jung pried it open, he did not find a machine. He found a roaring, infinite cavern. Jung did not want to fix a mechanism. He wanted to map the terrifying ecosystem of the human soul. He knew that what lies beneath our sanitized, socially acceptable masks is not just a graveyard of bad memories, but the raw, uncontainable wellspring of our total existence. Relying on surface-level psychology to fix a broken life is like trying to navigate a treacherous, violently storming ocean using only a map of the dry coastline. You are absolutely guaranteed to shipwreck. If you ever want to heal, you must look downward, abandon the arrogant illusion that you are the sole master of your own house, and prepare to face the terrifying depths of your own humanity. To truly understand the overwhelming depths of this cavern and why we are so fundamentally terrified to explore it, we must first examine the suffocating, artificially lit waiting room we have built directly above it. Long before you even knew how to articulate a coherent thought, a silent but absolute demand was placed upon your fragile shoulders, the demand to conform, to survive, and to be loved by a world that has no tolerance for the messy reality of the the untamed human spirit. In response to this crushing pressure, you became an architect. You began to painstakingly construct a mask. Carl Jung called this the persona, derived from the Latin word for the theatrical masks worn by ancient actors. At first, this mask is merely a necessary shield, a pragmatic adaptation to navigate the rigid hierarchies of your family, your school, and eventually the corporate battleground. It is the good son, the dutiful daughter, the endlessly accommodating employee, the relentlessly cheerful friend. It is every perfectly rehearsed smile you have ever forced onto your face while your soul was silently screaming in agonizing revolt. The tragedy is not that we build this mask. The tragedy is that over the decades we forget we are wearing it. The skin of the face fuses with the cold porcelain of the disguise. You look into the mirror, and you genuinely believe that this curated, flattened, socially acceptable caricature is the entirety of your existence. But I implore you to feel the sheer unyielding exhaustion of maintaining this fiction. Think of the monumental amount of psychological energy it takes to constantly curate your image, to police your tone, to suppress your exhaustion, and to meticulously tailor your personality to meet the expectations of people who do not truly know you. It is a slow spiritual death by 1,000 paper cuts. The persona is utterly tyrannical because it demands nothing less than the absolute sacrifice of your authenticity in exchange for the cheap, fleeting currency of societal approval. We trade the terrifying, magnificent wilderness of our true nature for a safe, sterile cage. Yet the longer you live entirely on the surface of this manufactured identity, the more brittle it becomes. A hollow, echoing void opens up right in the center of your chest. You achieve the promotions, you buy the houses, you secure the perfect relationship, and yet you are haunted by the persistent, chilling suspicion that you are an imposter in your own life. You feel fake because, in a very real psychological sense, the entity living your life is a fabrication, but this meticulously painted surface is entirely incapable of holding back the torrential flood of nature forever. Because nature abhors a vacuum, and because the human psyche cannot simply delete the parts of itself that fail to fit into this pristine societal mold, we must ask the terrifying question: where do all those rejected pieces go? They do not evaporate into the ether. They are violently shoved down into the lightless basement of your unconscious mind. Every time you swallowed your justified anger because it was impolite, every time you crushed your raw, burning ambition because you were told to be humble, every time you denied your unconventional desires, your grief, your selfishness, and your most primal instincts, you were throwing another piece of your own humanity into the abyss. Jung called this dark repository the shadow. It is the dense, invisible sack we drag behind us everywhere we go, growing heavier and more volatile with every passing year. Do not make the fatal mistake of believing that the shadow is a passive graveyard of dead memories. It is a living, breathing, pulsing ecosystem of repressed energy. It is the monstrous twin you have birthed through a lifetime of denial. When you starve an animal and lock it in the dark, it does not become enlightened. It goes feral, it grows sharp teeth, it learns to hunt in the shadows, and it develops an absolute burning resentment toward the master who imprisoned it. This feral entity is the architect of your self-sabotage. You wonder why you suddenly destroy a loving relationship over a trivial argument, why you drink until you cannot feel your own name, or why an incomprehensible wave of viciousness possesses your tongue when you are exhausted. It is because the persona is weak and the shadow is ancient and overwhelmingly powerful. When your conscious guard drops, when you are stressed, tired, or intoxicated, the lock on the basement door breaks. The shadow surges upward, seizing the steering wheel of your life with terrifying precision. It orchestrates your ruin not out of pure pure malice, but as a desperate, violent rebellion against the suffocating tyranny of the false mask you have forced it to live beneath. It is a scream for existence. It demands to be felt. It will gladly burn your carefully constructed life to ash if it means it gets to stand by the fire and finally feel the warmth. The self-destructive cycles that have plagued your existence are not signs that you are broken, stupid, or weak. They are undeniable proof that half of your soul is locked in a cage, crying out for liberation and using the only language it has left, the language of pure destruction. The human ego, however, is exceptionally fragile, and it simply cannot bear the agonizing horror of looking directly into the basement and acknowledging this monstrous starved twin as its own creation. To avoid the crushing weight of this realization, the mind performs its most brilliant and devastating magic trick, the mechanism of projection. If we cannot tolerate the darkness within ourselves, we unconsciously vomit it outward, painting it onto the faces of the people around us. Have you ever felt a sudden, intensely irrational hatred for a complete stranger? Have you ever encountered someone whose mere presence, whose mannerisms or way of speaking filled you with a venomous disgust that you could not logically explain? You were not seeing them. You were looking into a psychological mirror and attacking the very reflection of your own disowned shadow. We project our repressed arrogance onto our co-workers, our hidden insecurities onto our partners, and our disowned cruelty onto society at large. We desperately scour the external world for villains, scapegoats, and monsters, so we can self-righteously crusade against them. It feels intoxicatingly good to be the victim, to be the pure, innocent martyr, besieged by a world of incompetent, malicious, or toxic people. But this intoxicating righteousness is the ultimate psychological trap. As long as you believe that the demons tormenting you exist exclusively outside of yourself, you are completely powerless to stop them. You will leave one relationship only to find the exact same dynamic waiting for you in the next. You will quit one job only to encounter the identical tyrant wearing a different suit. The faces change, the scenery shifts, but the haunting script remains entirely the same because you are the one secretly writing it. You are the projector, and the world is merely the blank screen upon which you play out your unresolved internal civil war. This is the profound tragedy of the human condition. We bleed out on the battlefield of our own lives, frantically swinging our swords at phantom enemies while the real adversary sits comfortably behind our own eyes, until you realize that the things that trigger the most extreme visceral reactions in you are the exact keys to your own unhealed darkness. You will remain trapped in this agonizing hallucination. You will spend your entire life fighting ghosts, utterly blind to the reality that you are the haunted house. The only way to shatter this maddening cycle of projection and self-destruction is to commit the ultimate act of psychological courage. You must stop running, turn around, and walk deliberately into the terrifying dark. This is the arduous, deeply solitary path that Jung called individuation, the brutal but profoundly sacred process of becoming whole. True healing has absolutely nothing to do with becoming a perfectly sanitized, perpetually happy, flawless human being. That is the toxic lie of modern self-improvement. True healing is an alchemy of the soul. It requires you to descend into the basement, pull up a chair, and sit at the table with your monster. You must strip away the comforting illusions of your own absolute goodness. You must look at your capacity for cruelty, your desperate need for validation, your darkest fantasies, and your ugliest resentments, and you must find the unimaginable strength to say, "I am this too." This process of shadow integration is not a surrender to evil. It is the exact opposite. It is the disarmament of the internal saboteur. When you finally acknowledge the feral animal within you, realize it is not a demon at all. It is simply a wounded, abandoned part of your own vital life force. Within the shadow lies not just destruction, but your unbridled creativity, your fierce boundaries, your deepest passions, and your raw, unfiltered power. When you bring the darkness into the light of your conscious awareness, it loses its autonomous control over your behavior. The monster shrinks back into a manageable, integrated instinct. You no longer have to burn your life down to feel alive because you are no longer suffocating behind a mask. You no longer have to crusade against the flaws in others because you have finally forgiven the flaws within yourself. This journey will break your ego. It will alienate those who only loved the fake version of you, and it will demand an honesty so sharp it will make you bleed. But on the other side of this excruciating fire is a prize beyond all worldly measure, true unshakable sovereignty. You will walk through the world not as a fragmented, terrified imposter fighting external phantoms, but as a deeply rooted, fiercely whole human being. You will have reclaimed the lost continent of your own soul. The map has been laid out before you, the door to the cavern is standing wide open, and the architect of your ruin is waiting in the dark, hoping you finally have the courage to come home. The choice of whether to remain a prisoner of your own making or to step into the fire and become whole is now entirely yours. To summarize the profound journey of the human psyche, we must recognize that our greatest suffering stems not from the external world, but from the internal civil war we wage against ourselves. From childhood, society forces us to construct a persona, a polished, acceptable mask, while we ruthlessly shove our unacceptable traits, desires, and raw emotions into the dark basement of the unconscious, creating the shadow. Over time, this repressed energy turns feral, secretly sabotaging our lives and causing us to project our own hidden demons onto the people around us. We spend decades fighting phantom enemies, completely unaware that we are the authors of our own recurring misery. However, the path to true liberation is not found in becoming a perfect, perpetually happy individual, but rather in achieving psychological wholeness. This is the ultimate alchemy of individuation. By deliberately stepping into the darkness and facing our inner monster with radical honesty, we disarm its destructive power. Shadow integration allows us to reclaim our lost vitality, boundaries, and fierce authenticity. It demands the immense courage to accept that we are capable of both great light and profound darkness. When we finally stop running and sit at the table with our shadow, we shatter the exhausting illusion of the persona. We cease to be victims of our unconscious impulses and instead emerge as sovereign, integrated, and authentically whole human beings. The profound lesson: true psychological freedom does not come from relentless self-improvement or striving for moral perfection. It comes from radical self-acceptance and wholeness. The monsters you fight in the external world are almost always reflections of the unhealed wounds and rejected fragments of your own soul. You cannot conquer what you refuse to acknowledge. How to apply this to modern life? Notice your projections. The next time you feel an intensely irrational anger or venomous disgust towards someone, pause. Instead of attacking them, ask yourself, what part of this person's behavior reflects a trait within myself that I have denied or repressed? Use your triggers as a psychological mirror. Drop the mask incrementally. Practice lowering your persona in safe spaces. Allow yourself to express exhaustion, say no to unreasonable demands, or voice an unpopular truth without constantly apologizing. Stop sacrificing your mental health simply to maintain a socially acceptable caricature. Befriend the darkness. Instead of harshly judging your negative emotions like jealousy, petty resentment, or primal anger, sit with them. Journal about them honestly. By giving these feral feelings a safe, conscious space to exist, you drain their destructive power and transform them into pure fuel for your personal boundaries and creativity. Question for you. What is one part of your true, authentic self that you often hide behind your everyday mask in order to please others? Please leave a comment below to share your perspective so we can all learn and reflect together. If you found value in this deep dive into the human psyche, please subscribe to the channel. Your support is deeply appreciated and gives us the motivation to continue creating profound and thought-provoking content for you.